Hello again, this is Frantz Kantor, cartoonist, illustrator, part-time animator, and etc. Toon talker. I'm here with...
And I'm Jim Bridges, and besides etc. I'm the president of the Australian Cartoon Museum.
Yeah. So what are we looking at today? We're looking at a book called Creating 3D Animation, but not the 3D as you probably know. It's neither 3D with the glasses, nor is it 3D CGI. It's the Plasticine animation.
Hands-on 3D.
With fingerprints, yeah. Aardman book of filmmaking. It's edited by Peter Lord, Brian Sibley, forward by Nick Park.
I wonder what all the Americans think of these characters.
Oh, I think they love them.
I know they're very British.
This is Abrams' book.
Yep.
I know it's very British, but Americans love animation. The whole world loves animation. So let's dive in.
Splash.
Yeah. So this is a pretty good book. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, actually. These are this is a forward by Nick Park. This is obviously Gromit from Wallace and Gromit fame.
And he'd wished it had been written in the 70s.
Yeah. You can actually, I don't know if you can make it out, but you can actually see fingerprints on the figures because they were done in plasticine. So you can see it over there. A lot of the 3D CGI stuff that Aardman did, they invented these thumbprint textures as well. So when they were delved into CGI animation, they still try to keep it real, so to speak, by giving it a texture that it was...
It's always enlightening and unusual when you actually see the size of the actual figure.
Yeah, the scale, comparing...
Yeah. It's always a bit shocking, actually.
Well, it is and it isn't. It's handy to note because the world is very, very small. So the sets that they make are not as scary as you first think. Well, it's to do with
economics, isn't it?
Yeah. But it's also quite charming to see little tiny newspapers and little tiny, cereal bowls with cereal and bananas on top and toasts and things like that.
He mostly eats cheese.
Yeah. So it's a little brief history of Aardman, where they started, doing commercials, their workshops. The model making department was confined to a single table. That's how small it was. And early setups, early scenes, working on changing expressions. Stop motion animation, of course, it's frame by frame, which means it's straight ahead animation, but you have to have some form of planning. So oftentimes the animation is it's keyframed, but they do very careful animatics and from the storyboards and that to get all of the right keys and be able to do the extremes and the double takes and the right sort of expressions for the figures. So it's a little bit about the medium.
Movement.
Yeah, well, animation is of course breathing life into it. So it's a little brief concept of movement. This is, of course, the Muybridge films that students study. The Theatre Optique, Emile Reynard. So a little brief history of animation and where it comes from. The phanactoscope and the praxinoscopes and all of this sort of stuff, where it's all about persistence of vision, really. So that you get a sense of reality from the figures. The drawings or the pictures, they tend to come alive because of the illusion of the medium.
The vast majority of very early cinema was drawn. They were tricks. They were before the photography came in.
Yeah, well, it's important to know the birth of animation.
Yeah.
Because what they're trying to do is get you interested in animation. If they just introduce you to the CGI effects of big budget Disney films or something,
but animation was
you get
prior
lost.
to cinema. Because they hadn't
It was
worked out
prior to cinema. Yeah. So it's very important to note the birth. This is Gertie the dinosaur, obviously, which was like a stage show.
But he did one bloke did all the drawings.
Yeah. So why is this important to understand the history? It's important because if you enter animation from the Pixar perspective, or the Aardman or the DreamWorks perspective, you kind of get lost in the hugeness of it, because those are big animation companies.
Yeah.
It's important to note that
all these guys were individuals.
They were auteurs.
Yeah.
So before Disney, there were these little animation houses, little animated, single author-driven, single author animated stories. And that's important to note, and that gives you kind of an idea of what you can do yourself in animation. There's a little bit of... is this Russian animation? Black and white, Charlie Chaplin?
Ladislaw Starovich.
So early stop motion.
The colour picture.
Schwankmeyer. Yeah.
Yes, they're Czech, isn't he? Czechoslovakian?
Yeah. So the early stop motion films, some early stop motion films. And of course, Schwankmeyer was 1994. This is from Faust. Very spooky stuff. So you can get an idea of the range of stop motion animation is quite diverse. Yeah. George Powell, Tubby the Tuba. George Powell, of course, was a stalwart of films. Did a lot of magnificent stuff. Yeah, it also combining live action with stop motion animation that George Powell did.
And he went on to do the Powell TV system.
Yep. So these are all puppets. I mean, he was really one of the first studios that pumped out these films. So you had all the replacement heads for the expressions and things. So it's very important to make your life a little bit easier in the production process, because stop motion is a very time-consuming method. Okay.
Jerry Trinker.
Yeah, Jerry Trinker.
His last film.
Yeah.
Puppeter.
Oh.
And puppeteer, and it was about
beautiful.
The big brother was the big hand,
right? And
how he's creating art inside a cage.
Yeah, lends itself very well to these surreal concepts and political, social comment.
Well, they had to find diverse and sort of labyrinth ways of telling their truths.
Yep.
Because the officials weren't impressed.
Shakespeare, The Tempest.
Yeah.
Biblical stories, story of Ruth. So it's very, very diverse.
Howdy Doody.
Howdy Doody, yeah.
What was his character's name?
That's Doody.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Howdy Doody. Yeah.
That's a good shot. It'll show the scale.
Puppetry is a what would you call it?
It's very old.
Yeah. But is it animation?
Well, they mix it, don't they?
It's theatre. It's a mix
theatre, but they mix
animation.
They mix it.
Yeah, I like it because, like Thunderbirds and stuff. It's very creative theatre.
Pinocchio says, "I've got no strings to hold me down."
Cosgrove Hall. I used to love Cosgrove Hall when I was a kid. The Wind in the Willows, particularly. You couldn't really imagine Wind in the Willows done better than Cosgrove Hall's. That was in 1983. It's awesome work. This was on the BBC, the Magic Roundabout, which was another stop motion show. And of course, where would you be without Tim Burton? This is from Tim Burton's Vincent, and of course, A Nightmare Before Christmas. So that's where we are now. There's Nightmare Before Christmas again. So the modern big, the big films of using stop motion. King Kong, of course, was stop motion.
It's still a great film.
Yeah, Willis O'Brien. Of course, that led to the great Ray Harryhausen. And if you check out his
Jason
films,
the Argonauts,
you won't be disappointed. Yeah.
That's an 11-minute sequence where Jason fights all his skeletons.
Yeah. I just want to point out, though, something very quickly. this is an animation book. It's not really a how-to animation book. It is, in a sense, but it also gives you a little bit of a history of animation. It's for animated, it's for people who love animation. So where would you be in a book that loves animation without these little thumbnails? If you can try to imagine. It doesn't always work. Okay, so it's a shorter version. But these little thumbnails here going up frame by frame of a guy, a plasticine guy, jumping into a hole. Okay, I just thought I'd mention that. So here we go. Oh yes, Clokey and Gumby, of course, early TV.
That's George Pell too.
You know, I'm not sure. I don't think it is.
Okay.
Might be, but I might be wrong. Mark Twain, of course, is another. It's a live-action film. A full feature film. This is Morph and Chaz from the early BBC.
Visions.
Yeah, it's an Aardman BBC shorts. And of course, Aardman do some beautiful, very sensitive stories with this medium. So it's very unusual. So there's a shot from Grand Day Out, which was the Wallace and Gromit. I think it was the first one.
They had opera on BBC too, using puppets.
Yeah, this is very cool. Very cool. It's incredibly watchable. It's very, very imaginative.
This book's very British orientated, like even with the history of animation. There's not much American stuff here. It's European and British.
Yeah. Well, no, the Americans, they had George Pell and
I know, but
Harryhausen and stuff.
A lot of these guys started off in Europe.
Yeah, there's a signature expression, even in the storyboard. There's a signature Aardman expression, that long E with the wide mouth showing the teeth, which is, it just works so beautifully, so comically. It's brilliant. There's frames from the Aardman pop video for Peter Gabriel, Sledgehammer, which uses a stop motion.
A lot of people are actually involved in it, not just the Aardmans, I think.
Yeah, it's a little bit of stop motion and it's technique called pixelation. They use they use film, but it's frame by frame. Some early Burger King using Mr. Potato Head. Oh, this is a fantastic characters. These Rex are run. See, the other thing with Plasticine, you can make these very simple, almost fondant-looking characters that you can move, and they hold such a lot of meaning and expression. I mean, the pupils of the eyes are usually black holes. So they're pinholes that have been painted black, but they still have the holes, but you can't see them. Yeah. And the reason why they're there is because you can insert a pin and turn them.
Turn the eye.
You can turn the eyeballs.
But also the texture of these puppets.
They all have fingerprints.
I know, but kids want to touch them. They just
they're very fetish-like toys.
Yes, that's right.
And they have to, obviously, when they go on exhibit and touring, they have to put these in glass cases because kids just want to pick them up like any kid or adult would.
So you need cameras?
Yeah, you need cameras and timing.
Bolex.
Control boxes and
16mm.
So that's the way they're telling you a bit of the method, right?
They're not talking about these things either, are they? Or telephones?
No, they're not. And this is a very beautiful weighted camera.
It actually looks
rig.
like a prop from
motion control
from a Wallace and Gromit film, doesn't it? Looks like a prop.
Yeah. Well, the motion control gives you a more sophisticated camera movement.
Yeah.
By far.
So here is the basics. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the lights, of course. Now you can get little teeny weeny lights that just light the area. Yeah. But most studios used to use these big normal size spots. And the more spots you use, the more even the lighting, more pleasant the effect you get. So as a large, this is for a commercial, I presume, This is a large set, Limo Land. Yeah, it's a large set. And of course you can crawl underneath the set. That's where a lot of the wires hang out and stuff. And you can usually climb to get into the middle of the set.
Yeah, you have to get under it.
You have to get it, yeah, and there's trapdoors and things that you can pop up inside a building and move things around. But it's very ungainly and very hot and very uncomfortable. Some of the spotlights you get is just normal film and theatrical spotlighting. So of course, it doesn't really matter whether you're using an actor on stage or whether you're using a plasticine figure that's the size of your thumb. You still have the same lighting effects and the same moods and the same things that you would normally get.
I don't think you get a bad back directing an actor as opposed to doing all this stuff. Coming out of trapdoors and working in confined spaces.
Yeah, but I always love the cinematic feel that they get in such a small thing. This is from Wallace and Gromit's The Wrong Trousers. This is, I think, Gromit focusing on the penguin, who's the villain in the piece in the background.
He's doing his recce.
Yeah. Some more Wallace and Gromit and an example of how they set the stage up, what all the different parts of it are.
Same.
So backlights and side lights and bouncing and reflectors and etc. etc. So it gives you what's involved, gives you an idea of what's involved to get the set. Of course, a bit of...
It's a cute little bit of detail, isn't it?
Yeah. Different effects for colour lighting, you know, day for night and things like that. That's a cute truck. So the amount of detail that they put into such a small item is mind-boggling. So a little bit about technique, clay animation. This is actually a frame by frame, even though it's not named. You could probably, if you were to film that each one and play it on your camera, on your phone, you probably see that works as a beautiful smooth sequence. So a bit about the process of plasticine animation. There is another one again. These are great. An inchworm. This is beautiful. Yeah. Of course, to make it
a centimeter worm.
Centimeter worm, is that what they're called? Oh, that's a joke.
Sorry.
Inchworm, centimeter worm. Okay.
So you can even do it in your own bedroom, is what it's saying, isn't it?
That's a room setting.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure about that. It's just simple object animation that was for a set.
And for an opening shot, and all will be explained.
Yeah.
So all the stuff moved all around. The drinks all filled up.
Yeah. So that was the stage, right? So the box opened up and all the Lego blocks came out.
Old Luxor Junior
moved
here.
Around
old Luxor Junior, you know.
Yeah.
And the clock, the very important clock.
Running backwards.
Running backwards, yeah.
Oh, this is nice. That's a whole sequence that's been modelled out. Beautiful. So with this sort of thing, you just do model replacements, I guess. So each frame is actually made rather than the character moving. So it's not an articulated puppet, they're all pre-posed and printed out, I guess. So models and model making, this is the process of creating these little characters. You use a wire armature really if your character is up to it. So probably you could do it with plasticine, I suppose, but they're more commonly used to create some form of latex
you
or
need
rubber.
The structure, you need the strength.
Yeah, they're more commonly rubber skin in the end, rather than plasticine.
They'll change colours and stuff like that because of the heat.
Yeah. So the sheep from Wallace and Gromit, I think the third movie. Yeah, they became a very popular show in the end with, what's it called, Shaun the Sheep.
Let's start at the very beginning.
Yeah, but look how simple the armature is for Shaun the Sheep, you know. That's fantastic. It's so simple. And even the character design of Shaun, He's so expressive with such minimal shot, such minimal design, you know. And when they need things like eyelids for half-lidded eyes and eye blinks and lower lids and things like that to help with the expression, they're all individually modeled pieces out of plasticine. So it's brilliant stuff. Here's some of the storyboard sketches, layouts that they did for Grommet. This is Grommet's skeleton. It's got a little bit of a fleshed out effect, but you know, even look at the scale of it. There's a scalpel. It's quite a small. That's of course him standing on all fours. He does also stand up on two legs because he's got. So that means two models. So here's an example of a sketch explaining what sort of skeleton. Magnetic eyes. So the eyes are, you know, attached to the ball of the skull underneath the latex, and they're attached, you know, magnetically. That way they're easier to turn. You just turn them with little magnets, I guess.
And the final.
This is a mold, like the There's a sculpture of the Watt figure. Sorry. There's the sculpture of the figure, and of course it's then sliced up and put into this mold configuration, and then they make these molds, and then they put the latex or other material similar.
Sculpting the hands from clay, a character such as that will use a lot of hand gestures in the course of film, which means that the hands will need replacing from time to time with new ones.
Yeah, you have to make extra hands because moving the fingers around all the time if the character's strumming something means that the
well, they won't hold the
latex will just wear out.
Yeah. Making more molds?
Yeah, making more molds. It's the process of mold making. It's all quite interesting, explained there. This is the character of Preston from
the last film, wasn't it?
No, before the last film. This was a close shave.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very cool design. This is a beautiful little set. Look at the wonkiness of these buildings. It's lovely. Beautiful. This is a great film. This is from
Space. I need space.
Yeah, the Jaguar from Creature Comforts. It's a beautiful character. You can see the size of the set there and how much detail and love that they put into each of these sculpted bricks, stones, representing the zoo. You know, it's awesome work. Planning the set, that's what this article about is all about, planning the set. So don't do something you don't need. Don't do the backs of things if you don't need it.
Rolling hills, see? They're rolled, but there's gaps in between so you can move things around.
Yeah, you can move them around. You can create an artificial parallax if you wish to move it forward and back from the character. But that also just gives you an indication of, you know, rather than doing the hollows in the hills, you don't need them because they're out of shot. So, perfect. There's a lovely example of well, what's this for? This is an ad for Lifesaver, I guess. No, Polo, a similar sort of product. This is great. Wow.
This is deserted theatre.
Yeah. Wow, look at the size of this.
See, all the seats are busted.
Beautiful. Wow. It's lovely. Very I don't know what that's for, but stage fright. It's lovely. Some little pretend tools and little tiny weeny tools and little props and things.
It's a plain man over a toaster.
Yeah, like as with Jerry Anderson, you know, Stingray and Fireball XL5 and stuff. He used to use a lot of tops from tubes and bottles and things as buttons on control panels and stuff. So you have this sort of mixture of custom work and maybe if you're lucky enough to implement some found objects here and there. But everything has to have its own world proportions. So nothing. It's not realistic, but most of them are not realistic. But they have their own sort of proportions, so they fit within the animated world of Wallace and Gromit. So, and it goes for everything in it. This the workshop and how they put the whole thing together. Oh, this is a very funny sequence with the hairdryer.
He wouldn't have used it much,
stuff.
would he?
Yeah.
He got much
No.
to dry.
Some other examples of some of the props that they've used in the different shows: Ron Trousers and Morph and Rex, etc. This is the Mud-Nomatic machine. This is the design
the
for it.
emphasis
There's
on the
actual
crushing.
one. Yeah, look at the
It's a caricature of a machine, isn't it?
Yeah. Rain and water's very tricky to do in stop motion. They usually use gels and things like that to create the droplets, which is
the secret of pouring tea is to use rolls of squashed up brown cellophane.
Yeah.
This catches the light and makes it look as if it's moving from Palmy days. So that's your cellophane.
Brown cellophane. Yeah. Fellini used to use something similar to that idea with water.
Yeah.
In his films, to give it a sort of a Munchausen effect.
The ship goes on when it's got the rhinoceros in
theatrical
the boat.
stage effect.
It's got a rhinoceros in a lifeboat.
Yeah.
And
So you read it emotionally as water,
Yes.
but it's not. It's a over dramatized. Look at this.
Well, it's important. Actually,
toes.
what you said's important because it's important you get the emotion from something.
Yeah.
And even if it's just the water, it's still the emotion.
Yeah. Well, Aardman are very, very good at imposing emotion on the characters. The characters express these very complex, unique personalities.
Yeah.
And even in very simple characters like the penguin, they have a very subtle.
The timing is really beautiful.
Personality, which is complemented by the animation and the character design, the way the character is designed. It's not just to cut time; it's designed for a specific purpose.
This is focusing
This is a pitching session. Nick Park, with a stopwatch in hand, uses his own body to walk through the jerky, exaggerated movements of the Ron Trousers. So he's actually pitching that to the studio, to the animators and things. This is a beautiful walk cycle. Look at that. You can work on that. And there's a close-up, a pencil version of the foot. It's a lovely walk cycle. These are walk cycles in action, so to speak, in different purposes, different ways that they would use that in a film. A lot of people do. There's two schools of thoughts. That one sense says that walk cycles are very valuable to study. Another that you hardly ever use walk cycles in production.
Walking on the ceiling.
Yep. This is a beautiful cycle of baseball showing the action. And sorry, we've got just a technical problem. So these are beautiful things to study. Of course, run cycles and walk cycles, showing the extremes. You get a really good sense of rhythm. Some of the way they've used walk cycles and run cycles in their films, they're, show the character. The characters have a particular style of walking, a particular gait.
Circular walking.
Yeah, it's a fun little thing to do. These are replacement mouths for this character.
Slot in.
Stage fright. Yeah, they just slot in. They blend the edges across, soften them. So it's quite a bit of work involved, and you have to. It's quite painstaking. There's the jaguar again. Brilliant stuff. These are examples of visemes, which are visual forms of phonemes. It's more to do with the mouth shape rather than the sound that it's making. It's the shape the mouth makes to make the sound rather than the actual sound itself. So the mouth is not shaped for the sound. It's made to show the what the physical expression is rather than the actual sound itself. So there's two ways of explaining it. Of course, you've got to put in the words of the script, but it's the mouth shapes which are different. It's a different solution. Okay, it's worth noting the difference between phoneme and viseme.
So that's how all the different mouths are
that's your
stored
library.
That's a little box, and so
it's placed
they take that mouth out,
and then they use a smoothing implement to
they
smooth the
slide
edges.
it back in so you can see that line there, and then they just cover that over.
Yeah, it works brilliantly, very, very well. And of course, that's all to do with persistence of vision. This is Nick Park working on Chicken Run.
Chicken Run, yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like anything like Steve McQueen.
No. Steve McQueen. Isn't the voice Mel
Steve
Gibson?
McQueen, The Great Escape.
Oh, okay, yeah, of course. Chicken Run, yeah, of course. This is a storyboard, of course. There's so many more frames in an animation storyboard than a film storyboard because you've got to explain all of the antics, the takes, the double takes, the actions. You know, they're very emotion driven as well. So all of those things have to be planned because they have to be physically animated. This is a pitching session for The Wrong Trousers. And some of the sketches that go to make up the storyboards.
The whole
layouts.
wall is full of them. Look, all going all
The whole
back.
film is generally worked out. Oftentimes they'll edit storyboards and change them and make slight adjustments as they go. But that's why.
Do you think that's the most efficient way?
Yeah, for an animated film. In Pixar, they started calling the storyboard artists heads of story rather than artists, because they're actually using storyboards, but they're telling a story. So it's a visual story, which is the most important part of the film.
Yeah.
There's some more examples of storyboards from Wrong Trousers. The storyboards themselves are quite cute and loose. They're quite loose a lot of times, and some of some changes are created along the way for technical reasons or composition reasons.
Well, what your imagination does and what the actual set allows you to do are two different things.
Yeah, well, a lot of the technicalities are probably not really worked out exactly in the storyboard. So you allow for the actual the setup on the day to work out, where the practical.
But comparing both these, I prefer the storyboard actually.
Sometimes, the storyboard, it's a lot simpler to read.
Yeah.
And the complications
and funnier.
Yeah. Yeah, well, all of the expressions are highlighted beautifully. Lovely. This is Morph, which I've never seen a lot of him, but he's very, he's a throwback, I think, to the old days of Clokey and Gumby. Very simple character. These are from Creature Comforts. You can see these beautiful. Look at the signature, that expression of the E of the old lady turtle. And of course, the microphone in the shot, because they're
they were interviewing
really
people.
A charming series.
They were interviewing people on the street, and some people were in a DOS house.
Yeah.
And so they animated the images to fit
the characterization that they were recording. The person they were recording.
Yeah.
So if the person had, glasses on or something.
No, obviously not.
On.
But I mean, this is a very funny thing because they were talking about stuff in the family. The father hardly says anything, and the kid says mostly, and the mum says something that works as a great.
Yeah, and it's even some visual puns too. Like here, you can approach the character with a mic with a hand. Here the bears, and the bear's actually holding their mic, so you're not actually close up to the bears. You'd be scared.
And because
the gorilla is on a boom, poked in through the wire.
Yeah, and no one's scared of turtles.
No one's scared of turtles or aardvarks, armadillos. Exactly. Yeah, characterization this is a section on characterization, particularly I think strong with Aardman characterization, because they're even within such a simple character of Wallace. They get a lot of subtlety there.
That's right.
Beautiful.
They're very
That's
good
why
at
people
it.
love it.
That's right. They're very good at it, and you get this distinct feeling of British about it.
Yeah, what's an individual character that comes through. Even though it's plasticine, it's readable, it's believable. Yeah. So War Story is a lovely story
about how
this
they
man
stored
relating this
coal
incredible
in under the stairs.
Yeah. So his expressions and the design of the characters particularly nice, and and beautiful. It's a very touching story. It's great. There's more characterization on stage fright of the film. Even with very simple characters, they get very zany. The restaurant characters are very, very simple characters,
Well,
but
that's
they
a
get
great
a lot of beautiful. Yeah,
Teeth.
very zany, very cool. So he's a lovely, it's just amazing to me to see such beautiful expressions and animation from such a simple
Pig and Pog is very, very funny and very, very violent too.
Yeah, well, you can see.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's all in fun because the world of cartoon, cartoons can't die. So these are some of the titles for the editing, section of the book. The Wrong Trousers is a beautiful titling sequence for that film. That's really lovely. That harkens back to the film noir days, actually, of the 1950s.
Yeah.
Of Hollywood. Some more.
It's about sound.
Yes, about sound. Sound is not just the talking, it's a lot of Foley as well. And then the music has to be very complimentary and uplifting.
Do you want to explain what Foley is?
Foley is coming up with, if you've got a character eating toast, you need the sound of toast. Munching and stuff, but particular munching. It's not just, found things.
Why do they call it Foley?
Collected. I'm not sure. Probably a guy called Foley used to do a lot of those sounds.
Yeah, okay. That's a great shot.
Yeah.
And they're all the characters.
Yeah.
You should check out Pig and Pog. They're very, very funny.
All right. We'll be able to find that
Gut-bustingly funny.
On YouTube. And that's it. That's it, folks. Some awesome, useful information here. Look, film stock, types of cameras and lighting and sound equipment. You can get information on these.
Silicons and plaster.
Yeah.
American modelling clay. American modelling clay. Obviously the best.
Well, they'd probably make more of it. The factory's a little bit more efficient and bigger than the European ones, probably.
And why do you say that?
Because they'd probably make more clay.
Okay. Well, check out
the book. Have a think about it. Don't just dismiss this because it's hard work. Actually look into stop motion animation and do your own little short stop motion animation yourself. With the things that you have at hand.
Yeah, start off with just the clay. You don't necessarily, or plasticine. You don't necessarily need armatures. You can do little simple things without it.
Yeah.
And once you actually get that movement, once you create life, it's magic.
Move.
That's right. Once you get that magic in you, that's it.
Yeah, you created life.
There's no looking back.
This is Frantz Kantor and
Tim Bridges saying, see you next time.
Okay.
And follow us on Patreon.
Yeah. Link to us on Patreon. Bye-bye.